Good afternoon, students. This is John Inglet, Professor of English and the Humanities or Comparative Religions Professor. Today we are going to talk about Chapter 3, Buddhism. Here we have a picture of the Buddha lying down. It is said that his last moment before he died, he lied on his right side. So a lot of times you'll see the Buddha lying in this particular way. Who is the Buddha? You have a picture here of the Buddha teaching to an audience. Siddhartha Gautama lived around 563 to 483 BCE, before the Common Era. His father was a feudal lord near the Nepal-India border in the present-day town called Lumbini, and that's in Nepal. He is known to have received a luxurious upbringing in a nice palace with nice big walls around it. He was arranged marriage at 16 to Princess Yasodhara, and we know that he had at least one son, Rahula. His father, when he was little, his fortune teller, said that Gautama will either be the ruler of India or a great world redeemer. If it was up to his father, he would have been a ruler of India, but Gautama chose the other path, the world redeemer path. At an age, when you have the Buddha living in a luxurious upbringing, there's this sense of a journey that occurs. And one part of his journey is leaving the palace and seeing suffering in the real world. So the four passing sights are called the old crippled man that he sees on the side of the road, represents old age. He sees a diseased man on the side of the road. That represents sickness. He also saw a decaying corpse, which represents death, the inevitability of all of us. We will one day die. He also saw another thing that mesmerized him, and that was an ascetic. And here we have a picture of an ascetic. It represents the meditation and Buddha's journey into the path of asceticism. This is an oral tradition, so you're going to hear things like the four passing sights, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, etc. So there's a sense that in oral traditions, this is how they are taught. What did the Buddha think about the ascetic life? He spent many years in meditation, and so he was considered an ascetic, but he also recognized that life was more than just meditating. So he recognized the futility of the ascetic path. And he came up with what's called the middle way, the path between the extremes of asceticism and indulgence. So eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you may die is a proverb. That's indulgence, eat, drink, and be merry. So if you go too far to that side, to drinking and indulging in the desires, then there's a certain complication that occurs in regards to suffering. So you should balance yourself through the middle way. Here we have a picture of the Bodhi tree, what's considered the original Bodhi tree, the place, the location where the Buddha achieved enlightenment. Under this particular tree, the Buddha was tempted by what's called Mara. Mara could be like demons or evil ones, or it could be your own mind. And he was tempted by Mara, and he overcame his own struggles, his own deluded mind, and reached the idea of liberation. It says here, Gautama's mind pierced the world's bubble, collapsing it to nothing, and restored to the true being of Buddha, the awakened one. What did Buddha recognize? He recognized quite a bit. He recognized that his journey was different from the Hindu Vedic scriptures that we learned about in India, in Hinduism, in the last chapter. So he rejected the superiority of classes in the caste system. He rejected the superiority of Brahmanism. He also rejected the sacredness of the Vedic texts. He saw them as, in many ways, superficial and reaching out to gods instead of self for enlightenment. He rejected the supernatural and metaphysical elements of the Upanishadic thinkers. So he denied the concept of Atman. He came up with a concept called no Atman, or anatta in Pali, or anatman in Sanskrit, anatman. He rejected the asceticism, but saw the need for the monastery to have a community of monks and nuns, the Sangha, which he denoted as the Sangha. He accepted a rationalist approach to life with a religion of infinite compassion. And the term for infinite compassion from a Buddhist point of view is called karuna. What else did Buddha recognize or reject? He preached a religion devoid of authority. You can be your own authority. He writes, do not accept what you hear by report. Be lamps unto yourselves. Be lamps unto yourself. You also need some rational thought with that. I mean, you just can't go off and be an individual. You need to, it doesn't mean that. He wants you to be your own authority, but use rational thought to interact with that. The Buddha also preached a religion devoid of rituals. Basically, you meditate, you sit there, you relax, you follow the instructions. You don't have to have any kind of elaborate rituals as they did with the fire pujas in the Vedic texts. We're going to just say the Vedic culture. So superstitions are, quote, irrelevant to the hard, demanding job of ego reduction. And the term ego reduction did not exist in the Buddha's time. That word ego did not exist. I'm just letting you know that. But this is a good quote that I found. Buddha preached also a religion that skirted speculation. So you didn't have to ask yourself, does God exist? Where is God? Who is God? Etc. You don't have to ask those deep questions that are difficult to answer. Are we alone in the universe? Some of these questions the Buddha thought were speculation. So if you can't answer the question from a humanistic rationalist point of view, then you're wasting your time, the Buddha thought. And that thinking arose as something called non-theistic approach to religion, or a pragmatic approach to religion. Non-theism means we don't know, or we don't really take a stance on whether God exists or not. So that plays right into the Buddha's view. Buddha preached a religion devoid of tradition. As Buddhism was carried out throughout the centuries, we end up having lots of traditions. But at the point, he said, do not go by what is handed down, nor by authority of your traditional teachings. Sometimes you have to look beyond the tradition and look at the pragmatic elements of the human condition and judge what that entails in terms of religion. So Buddha questioned pretty much everything. Buddha preached a religion of intense self-effort, those who relying upon themselves only, not looking for assistance to anyone beyond themselves. It is they who will reach the topmost height. So effort or self-effort is needed. Buddha preached a religion devoid of the supernatural, which I've already gone through. And finally, you can sort of look at Buddhism from a 21st century perspective. If we're looking at Buddhism from that perspective of 21st century contemporary times, we can say that Buddha had something that was very different from the religions of India, Jainism, and Hinduism, for example. He had a very different approach. And you could say that Buddhism is empirical in nature, scientific. Empirical and scientific are synonyms. Buddhism can be pragmatic, therapeutic, psychological. Those terms didn't necessarily exist, again, but from a 21st century perspective, you can look at Buddhism as a psychology, as a science of the mind, as a therapy, And also, from his perspective, egalitarian. He allowed nuns to be part of the Sangha. So nuns and monks were both part of the Sangha. It could say that Buddhism is focused on the individual path to liberation. Having gone through that, I haven't really talked about the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths is not necessarily all of Buddhism. It's his first teaching that he gave. If you read through the texts, the teaching is given many times throughout the texts. Yeah, it's become the traditional view of Buddhism, the Four Noble Truths. And the Four Noble Truths pretty much answer two questions that are pragmatic. How can we minimize suffering in our life? And how can we attain inner peace? That's all. Not where is God? Where is, did I sin? Did I do this wrong? Those sorts of things. No speculation, just how do we live a better life? And step one is the first noble truth. There is suffering. Suffering is called dukkha. So remember the four passing sights: the old age, the disease, the crippled man, and ultimately the ascetic and the decaying corpse. That's the four passing sights. By analyzing that, by thinking about those sights, we can say that suffering does exist. It's not the end all. I mean, there are other things like joy and compassion, but suffering does exist. And he came up with the three marks of existence. Number one, dukkha, suffering. Number two, anatta, that there is no permanent soul or identity, that you don't have this soul that's reborn over and over again. You do have rebirth in Buddhism, but he's differentiating the soul as something permanent versus consciousness, which is a little bit more loose and lacks permanence, lacks personality. You don't have the same personality from life to life. Everything is different. And anicca, which means no permanence. So those three marks of existence go hand in hand together. If you're looking at a situation and you know that there's going to be suffering that does happen, by recognizing the suffering and the limitations of your own self, then you can possibly be happy. You don't have to have a knee-jerk reaction to everything. By thinking about these things, then your memory starts to recognize that things are impermanent and it's okay. What causes suffering? Suffering is caused by cravings or desire, tana or trishna. Tana is the ego oozing like a secret sore. And they're related to the three poisons as well. We are deluded or ignorant in many ways. We have cravings and desires, and we also have hostility or anger or aggression. So the three poisons play into the cravings. Once we don't have the object in front of us that we want, we start to suffer, we struggle, we crave things. The third noble truth, we must discover the root causes of these delusions, cravings, and hostilities. So it's definitely a cause-effect relationship. And if we can identify the root causes of our suffering, then move past them, then when they occur again and again and again, they will not be so strong. And the way out of the suffering is considered the Eightfold Path is a prescription to root out suffering. So I use the word prescription here, meaning in some ways pharmaceuticals companies and doctors prescribe something. So the Eightfold Path is the panacea, is the way out of suffering. Ultimately, nirvana means non-suffering or liberation. It means you're awake. Doesn't mean you're transcendent or you've reached God or you've reached some other realm of existence. It simply means that you no longer have the cravings that you did in the past. The Eightfold Path, number one, is right knowledge. You understand the Four Noble Truths. You understand the Eightfold Path. You have a sense of a deep understanding of meditation and the right knowledge to understand the path. Next is aspiration, the right aspiration, decision on what we really want, focused goals that are useful to ourselves and others. You don't have to believe in Buddhism to make aspirations about your life. I'd like to accomplish this when I'm 25 years old. I aspire to be an actor or a doctor or a scientist or a computer scientist or a stockbroker. So you can make aspirations in your daily life, which are focused goals toward change. That you have the right speech, that's the attention to language. It says here that speech should proceed toward charity and love. You want to avoid false witness, idle chatter, gossip, slander. Oh, did you hear about so-and-so? That's gossip. False witnessing, idle chatter, gossip, slander. You have to be careful because wrong speech is everywhere. Right behavior, that's ethics. The 5 precepts. Number 1, do not kill. Do not steal, do not lie. Do not be unchaste. Unchaste is sexual misconduct. Or take drugs or intoxicants. So no alcohol if you're practicing Buddhism. Obviously no drugs. Medicated drugs are probably different if they're prescribed by the doctor. You want to be chaste if you're in a relationship. You want to be in that relationship fully and not have sexual misconduct or adultery outside of the relationship, that sort of thing. Right livelihood or job. It says here, avoid, and this is written many years ago, hundreds, thousands of years ago. Avoid jobs such as poison peddler. That might be a drug pusher, slave trader. There's still slavery in the world. Prostitution, butcher. So you don't want to, kill animals. So you want to be away from this type of job. Brewer, alcohol, arms maker, and tax collector. I've never wanted to be any of those. Next is right effort. That's moral exertion. Enthusiastic effort is another way to put it. Enthusiastic effort to be joyful, and to be joyful in what you do and do it with a strong effort to benefit other human beings. Right mindfulness is next. All we are is the result of what we have thought. So you're continuously self-examining your mind, where you're at on the path, what needs to be overcome. Probably the closest to psychology is right mindfulness. Then finally, we have right absorption or right meditation. The Buddha taught 9 months out of the year and meditated the other 3 months. So that's the middle way. I assume that he meditated all the time, but he was with other human beings, the Sangha, throughout those 9 months of the year and teaching part of those time periods. So what else did the Buddha do? Here's a picture of Thai monks sitting together and meditating. I almost said the word worshiping. You don't really worship in Buddhism. You meditate. There's nothing to worship. Once we get into like Qigong and Tibetan Buddhism, then you're going to think, well, aren't they worshiping something? Buddhism changes as it moves to China, to Tibet, to Mongolia, to Japan, Korea, Vietnam, etc. The Buddha taught for 80 years. He established no predecessor. However, he did establish the Sangha, a community of monks to continue on the heritage of Buddhism. Now we want to move a little bit from Buddha to Buddhism. I think every religion has this founder. Many religions have a founder. And you could say the same about Christianity, moving from Jesus to Christianity, or Paul to Christianity, moving from the prophets of Judaism to present day modern Judaism. There's a sense of movement. So from the Theravada is the name of it, the 3 jewels, the things that you say. I go for refuge in the Buddha. I go for refuge in the Dhamma or Dharma. Dhamma is Pali, and Dharma is Sanskrit language. I go for refuge to the Sangha. Uh, in Sanskrit, it's Namo, Namo Buddha, Namo Dharma, Namo Sangha. So Namo, N-A-M-O, means I take refuge, or I go for refuge. It's not worship again, it's refuge. You are, basically Buddhism is the inspiration for your own enlightenment. So you turn for inspiration to the Buddha, you turn for inspiration to the Dharma, you turn for inspiration to the Sangha. This is the Theravadan perspective, one of the earliest sects of Buddhism. The big question remains, is refuge in the Buddha referring to Gautama as a god, or the idea of the awakened one? From a Theravadist perspective, the Buddha is awake, you're not worshiping him, you're turning for inspiration. There is this veneration that happens in all cultures. And I just went into a Thai restaurant and saw the veneration of two gurus, pictures in the corner with flowers and candles connected to it. So there is this sense of veneration of human beings that can be dangerous if the human beings don't live a correct life. Here's a background image, and there's a stupa in the background. That's a building that represents the Buddha from past times. They may have some relics of the Buddha in that particular stupa or not, like the bones of the Buddha or the different parts of the body of the Buddha, or something the Buddha was wearing, or other teachers. So that's what the stupa represents. It also represents this concept of enlightenment, nirvana, and to some degree a sense of the concept of emptiness, that things aren't what they appear to be, which is Maya in the Hindu tradition. More on Theravada Buddhism. Theravada means the teaching of the elders, the teaching of the elders. Theravadins view themselves as practicing the oldest form of Buddhism. The Mahayana sect stereotypes them as the lesser vehicle. However, they believe that direct experience, not belief in the Buddha, leads to nirvana. It's about direct experience. Bodhi as wisdom leads to a profound insight into the nature of reality. So it's all about self-effort, direct experience. Theravada Buddhism focuses primarily on the monastic life and the Sangha. So it doesn't necessarily have individuals like you or somebody else. It really does focus on the Sangha. And that's where the Mahayana Buddhists differ, is there's less focus on the community of monks and more focus on the village, everybody, not just the monks and nuns. Some of the sacred texts of the Theravada Buddhism is called the Tripitaka, the three baskets. We have the Vinaya, which is the conduct or the ethics of the monk and nun system. Then we have the Sutta or sutras. Since Theravada is a Pali-Canon Buddhist foundation, it would be Sutta. The Sanskrit is basically focused on the Mahayana traditions. So the Sutta is the discourses of the Buddha. Then the Abhidhamma is something entirely different. It's the supplement doctrine, but it's also talks about different kinds of mental states, lots of mental states, and how do you, not how do you reach them, but what they represent, mental states of consciousness as you're meditating. There are other things in the Abhidhamma as well. We will move to Mahayana Buddhism in the next lecture. I'm going to go ahead and stop now. And we'll talk about the greater vehicle, the Mahayana tradition, in our next PowerPoint.